In August, Newberg Graphic and Pamphlet Media did a story about me being selected as Newberg's Amazing Neighbor for 2023. And so at first I didn't really want to share a video about it. I didn't really want to talk about it. It felt kind of weird, like self-serving or self-promoting. But ultimately I felt like there was some things I actually did want to share about that, along with some of my thoughts about the podcast. By the way, if you're new here, this is your first time watching this channel, my name is Daniel Roberts. I'm a principal broker, real estate agent at a company called Premier Property Group. And we have a small team called the Joyful Roberts Group of me and my parents. So this channel, Living in Newberg, is all about what it's like to work, eat, play, sleep in Newberg. And then what I'm going to be focusing on in this video is about my podcast, which is completely separate from this channel, called the Givingtown Podcast. And that's really that podcast where I interview different nonprofit leaders and community leaders is why I got selected as the Amazing Neighbor for Newberg for 2023. And I've got some notes here on my phone. That's why I've got my phone in my hand. So I'm going to go ahead and share a couple of my thoughts. So the first thing I wanted to share is that, yes, it does feel good that people like the podcast, that people are listening to it, and people find it valuable enough to say, that I'm like the most amazing neighbor of 2023. So that feels good. And the ironic thing I found is that my podcast is about interviewing and telling the stories of the people who really are the ones doing the amazing work. And I'm just sharing their stories. So it kind of felt weird that somehow all these other people are doing all these amazing things and I'm really not doing that much except sharing their stories, yet somehow I'm the one that became the amazing neighbor. So just kind of wanted to clear that up. Like, I think there's really a way that I don't really feel deserving of it. But I realized, if this gets more people to share positive stories instead of focusing on the negative things, if that can get more people focused on, the good aspects of our town, then, I'm all about that. Can't really argue with that. Point of the podcast is to share stories of hope, generosity, and good stories in Newberg. That's like really the whole theme. And so I want to just get the message across that the whole reason I do this channel and like elevating Newberg in people's minds, saying, hey, Newberg's a great place to live. The podcast, there's a lot of great things happening. Ultimately, I'm a firm believer that you can't fight negative with negative. Like, you can't say, this sucks, and just like, we need to stop doing that. Because you're always just going to get led back to that. Like, if you want change, you have to focus on the goal and the vision that you're looking for, that you're aiming for. And if you don't do that, like, if you only get stuck focusing on all the negative things, like, you're never going to change. So that's something I am really on a mission to do in this town, whether it's through this channel, whether it's through the podcast, or really those efforts together. I really just want to help people have hope and have peace and have joy, and just be able to share those positive messages with each other. We really do live in a great community. There's people who love each other, who care about each other. There are amazing things happening all the time. So if you haven't checked out the podcast already, highly encourage you to do that. And then the last thing I wanted to share is there was a mistake in the article, because I mentioned this channel while I was talking to Gary Allen, the editor, about the podcast. And I mentioned that it had 50,000 views. And so in the article, it was that the podcast, the Givingtown podcast, had 50,000 views, but really there was this channel that has 50,000 views. The podcast only has like 3,500. So it made it seem like the podcast had like 10 times more views than it did. So I just felt like I wanted to clear that up. Not really a big issue, but it was, something that I felt like needed to be shared. And I just want to close by saying thank you so much to all the people who really do make Newberg an amazing place. There are so many amazing neighbors. Even though I may have gotten selected as like the amazing neighbor, there really are so many people, so many organizations who, Newberg, Dundee, and this whole surrounding area could not really function. It would not be a great place to live if it weren't for all the people doing those amazing things. So I just want to say thank you to all of you who make this town a great place. And, if you are interested, if you want to have a part in making Newberg better, if you want to say, hey, we need to focus on the good things instead of the bad, I'd highly encourage you to subscribe to this channel. You can subscribe to my podcast. I've got a link down in the description on how to do that. I appreciate you. I appreciate your time. And I just wanted to share that with you all. So thank you so much. And I'll see you in the next video.